yeah, welcome to the Intellectual Freedom Podcast. We are at episode, can you believe it, 105. I'm David Hopkins, humanities professor and your host/guide on this journey. Glad you are here to spend about 45 minutes or so of your week in conversation about topics that help grow your mind, expand your perspective, and analyze incredible people, philosophies, and theories that impact our lives. Not from some superficial perspective, but by looking at huge, sweeping movements in history. So, I like to start out by giving a shout out to different cities and countries that are listening in. But this week, I want to say thanks to everyone who has subscribed to the Substack page. We broke through the 100 users or subscribers this week, and actually we're at about, I think, 103 right now. Everything I do is not for money. I make no money. I ask for no money. I do this because, number one, it's a really cool outlet to make my own curriculum outside the university. And I like to design and develop my own talks because I can discuss, whatever the hell I like in whatever direction I want to go. I don't get to do that in the state college system. And number two, I think it's incredibly important to talk and write and discuss with anyone who wants to push their intellect a bit. As I think far too often in society, we just stay way too superficial, to be honest with you, way too binary, where everything is simple and easy and we can identify the good guys and the bad guys. But that isn't really the way life actually works most of the time. Life is hard. Life is complex, and we need to think deeply because, sometimes the simple and the superficial mindset just isn't enough. So thank you again to the Substack subscribers, and if you just go to the show notes, you're going to find that link where you can subscribe as well. See that Substack page? I designed this almost kind of in a classroom style format, and it gives you also get some in-depth articles about the podcast, and you'll get free resources to go deeper than I go in the podcast, reading materials, and you can contact me with questions, comments, and I do some extra writing, which I don't even really discuss here, just short articles, and you can even send me show ideas. We're in this thing together, so please don't hesitate to join and actively engage. But let's get to it. We're off to the topic of Islam, Muhammad, the Quran today, as well as a super important idea that just kept coming back to me as I was reading the materials this week on Muhammad and scanning through the Quran, that I think all people of faith should consider uniting rather than fighting amongst each other. Because let's face it, religion doesn't necessarily have the reputation of trying to come together versus fighting and killing each other. As in the end, in this postmodern world, people that believe in a metaphysical being, regardless of that being and regardless of that faith, have a lot in common. I would even be so bold to argue they have way more in common than the differences. Yet those differences in this binary good versus evil mindset that just has infested our society today, the commonalities are often disregarded and the differences are just highlighted to the point of danger. So this particular talk, it can be a hard one for anyone who isn't a Muslim. And there is so much demonization, so much oversimplified information out there about Islam. But I hope after today, I can give you some information to bring a new appreciation about Islam. So please, all non-Muslims or atheists, hang on with me and learn. And I bet by the end of it, you will find some significant tidbits of knowledge to expand your own perspective. Yet, even by my own imploring, I know some of you may be thinking, why do I need to understand Islam? I'm not a Muslim. So let me make a case to those skeptical just to listen through this. The Islamic tradition is the newest and the very last of the Abrahamic faiths. And when I say Abrahamic faiths, I'm talking about Judaism, then it moved to Christianity, and then Islam bursts on the scene in the early 7th century when God, according to the faith, revealed himself to Muhammad. And he lived roughly, give you a historical context, about 570 to 632. Muslims are adherents of Islam, and that central figure of it all is, of course, Muhammad, and he's known as the Holy Prophet. He is not considered God or a god. He is considered the Holy Prophet, and the Muslims consider him to be the last prophet sent by God to humankind. And his wisdom and his teachings are deep and profound, and people anywhere and everywhere can learn from his life and his teachings. So, Muhammad, like so many of our great minds and thought leaders, he didn't have an easy upbringing, to be sure. He was orphaned at a very early age and was raised under the care of an uncle. And you have to imagine that back in the days of Muhammad, being an orphan often meant ending up, an indentured servant, abused, neglected, being part of the lowest of the low in society. And all this often spelled was literally early death for so many orphans. And so we could say that Muhammad was very, very lucky to have an uncle who could step in and help him and raise him. Now, eventually he grew up and married, and he lived as a pretty, I guess you'd say average existence. He was a fairly successful merchant. He took his place in society in the workaday world of trade and commerce. I mean, in his early adulthood, Muhammad was basically the equivalent of just an average working man. He was successful at it, but not overly successful. Yet, in the end, he had a point in his life he was just not fully comfortable watching the materialistic, the hedonistic, and this polytheistic world that he lived, as he saw it as very decadent and devoid of a deep and profound faith and meaning and purpose. So at 40 years old, this was the turning point in his life, and everything changed for him. One evening, he went to a mountain cave, as this was not uncommon for him. He did it quite frequently to kind of just escape and get away from things and get away from the regular world and to think and to meditate. And when he reported that while he was there, the angel Gabriel visited him. Now, for those not familiar with the Abrahamic tradition, if you get visited by the angel Gabriel, it's a big deal, a really big deal. The angel Gabriel is a messenger of God, and he appears to people with very important messages. Gabriel is mentioned in the Jewish, Christian, and the Islamic scriptures. There's one of these commonalities. In the Bible, Gabriel is mentioned as appearing to the prophet Daniel and announcing the coming of the Messiah. In the New Testament, Gabriel appears to Mary, the mother of Jesus, to announce, hey, you're going to have the Son of God. You are pregnant. In Islam, Gabriel is considered to be one of the archangels and is revered as the angel who brought the revelations to the Prophet Muhammad, which form the basis of the Quran. Overall, Gabriel is considered a powerful and important figure in all Abrahamic religions, as he is almost always bringing divine messages and carrying out God's will. So this was the first of many revelations that Muhammad received throughout the rest of his life. I'm so fascinated, especially by the first revelation, as with the Desert Fathers and the mystics. These mystical contacts with God always amaze me. It's hard to fathom the state of mind one must be in to receive such a powerful message. Sometimes I wish I could get in one of these messages, and other times, as after you hear what happens, I'm kind of glad that I only just read about them. I think generally, what we see from these, they're life-altering events. Every time that God or an angel or some mystical vision occurs, they truly shatter existence as it knows for that individual. And we see this over and over again across religious traditions, and Muhammad being no exception. But anyway, so the story goes like this. The angel Gabriel appeared before Muhammad in the year 610 CE and said, "Read." Upon which he replied, "I'm unable to read." Then the angel Gabriel, he grabbed hold of him and he embraced him strongly, heavily. And this actually happened 2 more times, after which the angel commanded Muhammad to recite the following verses. And I'm going to read this directly. Quote, "Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clinging substance. Read, your Lord is most generous. He who taught by the pen taught man that which he knew not." End quote. Now, in our own English language, reading, the word reading, means just that. Pick up a book and, just read. But the meaning, the translation of the word is deeper in the Arabic of the time. It is believed that that reading, the instruction to read, was a call to Muhammad to seek knowledge and to convey it to his people. It was also a symbolic gesture, as the act of reading and writing was highly esteemed in pre-Islamic Arab society, and it was a way for Prophet Muhammad to emphasize the importance of knowledge and education. The word Quran itself is derived from the Arabic root word, which means to recite or to read. Thus, the Quran is often translated as the recitation. And this becomes the cornerstone of the faith of Islam to this day. It's interesting as there are stories that after the encounter, Muhammad was deeply troubled at first. And I don't know, I can imagine going up to my wife and telling her, "Hey, guess what, honey? God just spoke to me." "No, really? Don't look at me like that. It really happened. And the angel Gabriel told me that I needed to read and recite knowledge to all the people in America and the rest of the world." I mean, she may have me institutionalized on the spot. Well, luckily for Muhammad, his wife, Khadijah, took him to a holy man so he could explain, and so that Muhammad could then explain what happened. And this man understood the ancient biblical text, the existence of divinely inspired prophets and communication with God, and decided the vision and the encounter was valid, and Muhammad should accept this call and persist and follow through with the instructions. Don't ignore the instructions. You got to go forward. So the subsequent revelations that Prophet Muhammad received form the basis of the Islamic faith, and the Quran remains a central text of the religion. Now, Muhammad, he began preaching publicly 3 years after receiving his first revelation, proclaiming that God is one. The complete surrender, which is the meaning of the word Islam, to him is the only way that's acceptable to God, and that he was a prophet in the message from God. Muslims believe that Islam is a primordial faith, one that was revealed many times throughout human history. God first revealed himself to Adam, and then through prophets such as Abraham and Moses and Jesus, and then finally Muhammad. He's the last prophet, and Muhammad's role was to restore the origin of the original monotheistic faith announced by previous prophets. Muslims believe that the purpose of existence is to worship God. Life in this world is a preparation for the next world. Muslims believe the wicked go to a place called Gehenna. Now, just as an FYI, if you're unfamiliar with the term Gehenna, it's a place of punishment in the afterlife where the wicked are sent to atone for their sins. This concept of Gehenna is described in various Jewish texts, such as the Mishnah and the Talmud, and it is often associated with fire and torment. A version of hell, you could say, for sure. Now, if I was to grab like the headline news of the faith, what are the core practices of Islam? What do they include? There's really 5 pillars of obligatory worship. If I had to summarize it down so I can fit it in this podcast, number 1 is faith. That's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is prayer. Pillar number 3 is charity. Pillar number 4 is fasting. And pillar number 5 is known as the pilgrimage to Mecca. Which, in learning about this, is maybe the most amazing pilgrimage in the history of the world, really. So what happens in this pilgrimage is it's basically every Muslim that is able to do it financially, physically, and if you have extra wealth, you should also contribute so others can make this pilgrimage to Mecca to worship God. It must be an incredible thing for a Muslim to worship with Muslims all around the world when they go. I mean, you can see images and learn much more about this online. There's a series of tasks and duties, and there's prayers and there's sermons that they receive throughout this trip. It's really a spectacle for a non-Muslim to behold, and for a Muslim, surely, I can't imagine it must be just a life-defining moment. But anyway, after Muhammad's death, Islam divided into rival camps known as the Sunni and the Shia, and those are still to this day the 2 main factions. The faith also has a mystical tradition called Sufism, which recalls a lot the Desert Fathers. Like all religions, though, there are different factions and internal theological, political disagreements. I mean, heck, getting Catholics, Baptists, Presbyterians, Lutherans, non-denominational churches to agree on everything happened. But in spite of the division, Islam flowered after Muhammad's death, and the period from about the 8th century to the 13th century is often called the Islamic Golden Age. It was during this time that the Islamic world, I guess you could say, it just flourished grandly, economically, culturally, scientifically, and it produced many distinguished scholars. I mean, the Middle East during the Golden Age was light years ahead of feudal Europe in learning math, science, without a doubt. Okay, so now, before we go deeper into our conversation on why the world, Islam's, Christians, Jews, should change their perspective and move more towards unity versus division, it is critical, like all weeks, that I just read a couple passages from the text that I've been exploring during the week. And of course, I just cherry picked some that I think really stand out to me. On the Substack page, you can read the entire Quran if you want. I think for this episode, though, we just have to read from the Quran, as I want you to get a flavor of what Muhammad says and what some of the core beliefs are of Islam straight from the primary source, especially for those who maybe have never once read anything from Islam or the Quran, and your knowledge of this faith ends with short 45-second news broadcasts or ideologically or politically motivated sound bites. So here we go. Here's the opening passage of the Quran. Quote, "In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, praise be to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, the most beneficent," why I'm struggling with that word, "the most merciful, master of the day of judgment. You alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, not of those who have earned your anger, nor of those who go astray." End quote. This surah, which in English we call chapters, is considered the most important chapter of the Quran, and it's recited at least 17 times a day during the Islamic daily prayers. It's a prayer that acknowledges the greatness and the mercy of Allah and seeks guidance and protection. The chapter also introduces important themes of the Quran, such as the oneness of Allah, His role as the Lord and Master of all creation, and the importance of following the straight path. Hardly anything there That's the same type of thing that we hope in so many faiths. There's really not much of a difference there. But from chapter 25, moving on salvation, quote, "The servants of the All-Merciful are those who walk on the earth modestly and who, when the ignorant address them, say peace." Then from chapter 31, quote, "The Confederates, men and women who have surrendered, believing men and believing women, obedient men and obedient women, truthful men and truthful women, enduring men and enduring women, humble men and humble women, men and women who give in charity, men and women who fast, men and women who guard their private parts, men and women who remember God often. For them, God has prepared forgiveness and a mighty wage." So from these verses, one thing strikes me about Islam that it seems to be lacking in Christianity by most. Not all, but most. And that's a daily focus on God. This seems to be drilled repeatedly into the followers of Islam. In fact, one of the most profound examples of this is that daily prayer. Muslims are required to pray 5 times a day, which are known as just simply the 5 daily prayers. The 5 daily prayers, they're obligatory and are performed at very specific times throughout the day. The prayer times are determined by the position of the sun in the sky, and they vary based on the location of the individual. Now, I will say this, having had young Muslims in my classes before, of course, sometimes a Muslim may miss a prayer or two, but they always try to make them up. That was one of my questions that I had for them. How in the world, what if you're in the middle of a road somewhere, stuck in traffic in Tampa on I-275 and it's time to pray? Well, you just have to make it up. But as they said, and this really stuck with me, these were two young college students. Nobody's perfect. And, that's one of the biggest challenges in following Islam, or really for anybody of faith, that the Quran sets a standard. I mean, it's a high standard, really. I mean, imagine trying to ask a Christian, a Catholic, a Protestant, anyone, and tell them they need to pray at specific times 5 times a day. Wow. I mean, everybody would fall short of that, and it's no different for Muslims. They can fall short of this. And, the goal, though, for anybody living a faith-based life is to be just a little bit better each day. And then when one fails, which everyone will eventually, nobody's perfect, seek forgiveness and get back at it. But on another point, in Christianity, heck, we have certain Saturday party people and Sunday Christians. And then, of course, we have the obligatory Christmas and Easter Christians, or wedding and funeral and baptism Christians too. And in Islam, there seems to be a much stronger push to stay engaged in the faith all week long, which seems a very admirable trait to me. And again, it isn't that the Bible doesn't speak of praying and following Christ and his teachings all the time, every day, and to pray every day. It's just that the Muslim faith seems to do a better job of actually embedding the activities into the daily rituals and practices that all of us go through every day. And that's, what the daily prayers do. Chapter 107, they discuss charity. Quote, "Have you seen him who will tell lies on the day of judgment? That is he who repulses the orphan and urges not the feeding of the needy. So woe to those who make display, yet refuse to be charitable." End quote. Such a powerful verse. I mean, especially here in America, in our land of largesse and material comfort, yet how often do we stop? How often do we appreciate those born and help out and assist those born in poverty or abuse or neglect? Or do we just go about our days with little or no care for others? I mean, it's one thing to feel empathy for somebody, but how often do we actually stop and help others? I can tell you, my wife and I have had many foster kids in our house. I suppose 15 to 20 over, I suppose 5 years or so. And it was one of the most eye-opening experiences of my life. I think now we're a little too old to be chasing around kids anymore. But I think, and I just think all of us should really take this teaching in the Quran to heart, showing empathy and caring for those who don't have. Because, well, there's always lots of people out there that are really hurting. So, I love that verse. So that's just a tiny sampling of the Quran. And in the Substack page, again, I have a link to the Quran. You can read more to even get a deeper appreciation of it. But just from what I've read so far, does that sound like the writing of a bunch of warmongering terrorists? I mean, let's be brutally honest. This is the message that is far, far too often spread out there by media and sadly even our politicians. Are there extremist elements in the Islamic faith? Well, of course there are. Just like there are extremist elements in every single faith. As it seems always, politicians, ideologues, and the rulers attempt to weaponize religion because it's such a powerful force in society and always has been. And for the malevolent, religion is an easy target to use to create fear, anxiety, distrust of anyone who isn't, quote, one of them. Yet, this isn't the majority of Muslims any more than it's all the Christians or all the Jews. This is why we need to be real careful not to jump to conclusions, especially here in America or in the West in general. We need to judge each action, each person, and each word in its proper context. And, well, maybe give a little benefit of the doubt. Maybe just a little bit, don't you think? I mean, we are all so conditioned by our cultures, but I believe we should all try to be a bit more open-minded and less emotionally judgmental. Okay, now, I want to transition. We've been through this medieval period of discussion for, 6-7 weeks, really going from Judaism to Christianity and now to Islam, the trifecta of the Abrahamic religions. And you've heard me today make the claim that these three religions have more in common than they have differences. So let me just, for a few minutes, run down some reasons on why I believe this to be the case. After reading through our medieval literature and these various religions, I think this is true. And here's just some reasons. Number one, I think just belief in one God. All three of these religions are monotheistic and worship the same God, or very, very similar to vision of the same God. In fact, prior to the Abrahamic religion, pretty much every single faith that we know was a polytheistic, nature-born religion that had many gods. These three changed that perspective 180 degrees. Number two, sacred texts. The Quran, the Bible, the Torah are considered holy books of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, respectively. And all the core of the Old Testament resonates across all three faiths. All three can read and pretty much agree on pretty much every single one of the teachings. Prophets, the Muslims, the Christians, and Jews, they all believe in the existence of prophets who have delivered these divine messages from God, including Adam and Abraham and Moses and Jesus. The idea that God spoke to humans through these spiritual leaders is recognized fully by all three faiths. Rituals. Each religion has its own set of rituals and practices that they're an integral part of their faith, such as prayer, fasting, pilgrimage. Sure, the pilgrimage to Mecca is a different level of things. But going to the Holy Land in Christianity, for example, is something that is held in very high esteem in Christianity as well. But this idea that by fasting and praying and seeking God and forgiveness and all are integral in all three faiths. Morality, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, they all emphasize the importance of ethical behavior, including honesty, compassion, and justice. Community. Each religion places a very strong emphasis on the importance of community and the role of religious leaders in guiding and supporting their followers. Belief in an afterlife. All three religions believe in the existence of an afterlife where the soul upon death is judged based on their deeds and their beliefs in this life. So the commonality is very, very strong here. And when in this postmodern world, the very concept that there is not any God at all is commonly held, I mean, that's a full frontal attack on all three faiths. Heck, in our modern world, a believer in religion is often ridiculed. So it would stand to reason that these faiths should, in fact, consider throwing off their differences, embrace the things that are common, and try to unite around their one God, the one God of Abraham. Now, you might be thinking, dude, what is this spur in your boot all about? Are you some kind of religious zealot trying to create some religious revolution or something? No, that isn't me. I mean, I see problems. Problems that appear to be inherent in our society that a faith-based approach could alleviate or solve. I'm not qualified, nor able, nor interested in trying to convince you to anything. But if I could gather Abraham, Jesus, and Muhammad in a room together, wow, that would be quite the thing. I imagine, and that's my crazy imagination and opinion, that these three people could agree on a whole lot in what they see in society. They could agree a whole lot on what's going on in society. Oh yeah, there'd be a whole lot of drama too, because there are stark differences. And you know, to the Jew, Jesus is a prophet. To the Christians, Jesus is God. To the Muslims, Jesus is a prophet. You know, there's big difference. But when we analyze their holy text side by side, there's a whole lot of agreement. And when the opposite point of view is a life without God at all, there is no right and wrong. Anything goes. I doubt that Abraham, Jesus, or Muhammad would be okay with any of that. Pretty certain a life without value beyond our own biological existence and how that can impact our morality and culture. Well, I think that should be a common problem for all the Abrahamic religions to unite against. There just seems to be a lack of moral compass in the postmodern world, at least in practice. We've talked about this. I don't see a positive transformation going on now that quote unquote God is dead, and this idea that we're just this creature that was created without any divine inspiration from anything, and this world without God. You know, we talked about that with the lack of natural law in our discussion with Thomas Aquinas last week. But many argue that without a belief in a higher power, the very structures of society that we have known for centuries will ultimately collapse under the weight of just ambiguity. This death is not a quick nuclear explosion. It's more like a slow and a painful decline into a void of just moral relativism and ethical ambiguity. Things slowly die. They don't die instantaneously. Eventually, gone will be those days when the principles of right and wrong are universally recognized and respected at all. Instead, we will increasingly find ourselves, just kind of adrift in a sea of subjectivity where truth is relative and anything goes. It's a bleak landscape. It's a dark landscape. And the very foundations of society in that world where there is nothing that props everything up and holds them united together, that society will crumble. And the consequences are very dire. And you might say, what's the big deal? Change is good. And I would agree with you. Change can be good. But in this instance, what we appear to be witnessing in our society is not growth, not unity, not strength, but rather what we're seeing is anger, vitriol, social decay, moral bankruptcy, spiritual emptiness. And it just seems that it's leaving us with nothing but that bitter taste of nihilism. See, the Abrahamic faith can be a buttress against that decay if they're joined. And they take those unifying elements and push them in a productive way, not an authoritarian way, out to society. Because if they don't, their collective strength is going to be diminished. Every data point shows that the world is less and less and less religious all the time. Just another thing that we're seeing in a world devoid of a faith-based perspective is I guess you could say a whole lot of anxiety without a belief in an afterlife or a plan for a life greater than just some materialistic droning through life. Many struggle with the idea of their own mortality and finding any kind of a meaning in life. Right now, we're the most depressed, the most anxiety-riddled, the most drugged and medicated society to ever walk the planet Earth. This is a problem for me. This postmodern individualistic, materialistic mindset, it's not working. It's just not working. All three of the Abrahamic faiths in unity can provide to millions and millions, if not billions, at least some sense of hope, a sense of purpose, a way to act, something to strive for, or at a minimum, a sense of calm. I mean, the anxiety, the depression, the suicide, it's just at a different level. Another huge problem in our postmodern world is this idea of alienation. It's a very existential thought. You know, I recently saw a study from Cigna that indicated that Americans are more lonely than at any time on record. They've been tracking what they call a loneliness index, and you can look that up. They found that 3 in 5 Americans report feeling lonely, and it increased another 7% from last year. Additionally, the study found that Generation Z, and these are people that, below 22 and younger, it's the loneliest generation ever recorded, closely followed by millennials, which, run from 22 up to 37 years old. I mean, this is where our 2 youngest generations come from. These are the future of the country. The impact of this alienation and loneliness is profound, and it leads to all kinds of negative impacts on their physical and mental health, including depression, anxiety, suicide, religion, and especially all 3 Abrahamic faiths. They put a major emphasis on community, gathering support, helping each other. There's substantial money and effort in all of these faiths on creating small group gatherings outside of just a Sunday or Saturday service to unite people. This can prove to be a buffer against alienation in society. Now, for the skeptics still listening who are thinking, dude, it's way bigger than just that. And I'll give you that. The problems of morality and anxiety and depression and loneliness, they're bigger than just a lack of faith. To pretend that one thing, if everybody got religion, all of a sudden all the ills of society would go away. Well, that's silly, right? There's all kinds of problems that are big and grand and complex. Yet, if I look across the landscape of these 3 religions, and I look at the decrease in those in religious following and the belief in God, and I see the simultaneous increase in all these negative impacts, there seems to be that the composition, the structure, the teachings together, if all 3 of the Abrahamic faiths would band together across a broad population base, it could impact for the good so many people. Yet, far too often, each faith is sniping at each other. Sometimes literally sniping at each other in the West Bank, or theologically all the time. And this diminishes the power of all 3 of them. Just something to consider. So, I just think if objective minds would clear the slate as I look at religion, not from a firebrand ideological extremist, priest, pastor, or imam, but those who know we live in a postmodern world and religion needs to recognize this. But there's much potential out there to fight back the negatives of postmodernism by emphasizing the social and community aspects of religion, because all three Abrahamic religions, if they placed a greater emphasis on community building and being more inclusive and less judgmental, could help attract new members and increase their relevance in society. The doomsdaying, the often hypocritical, judgmental stuff that religion is famous for, and the condescending glances and the mean-spirited comments, they need to stop. None of these faiths preach any of these negative traits, which rightly or not are often how society is perceiving religion at large. Heck, I mean all the negative aspects of religion, the judgment, the bullying, the cynicism, the snarkiness, the condescension. Heck, people can get that stuff on social media every day. So if the religious want to positively impact our world today, they need to adapt. They need to be different than the postmodernists on Facebook or Twitter. Also, when you read the ancient texts, the prophets and the faiths of all three religions, they never shied away from addressing social issues. This is important too. Religions can focus on addressing these social issues such as poverty and racism and inequality with an air of humility, with an air of caring and wanting to help and be a part of the solution, not with some snide, condescending air about them, because these are the important concerns for many people, particularly our younger generations. There should be a lot more interfaith dialogue. Religions can engage in dialogue, collaboration, and help promote greater understanding and acceptance between the different religious communities. All three Abrahamic religions can promote, educate, explain, and tell of their amazing histories and stories of average human beings achieving amazing things. Moses stuttered. Jesus was born in poverty, the son of a carpenter. David was a shepherd boy. Muhammad was an orphan turned average tradesman. Yet through their God, through their belief, through their faith, they changed the landscape of the entire world. These faiths need to up their game in showing how a passion, a purpose, and a faith can lead to life transformation. It's a powerful and it's a compelling message, but it has to be conveyed properly. A focus on the transformational power of having faith, which is often mocked, can go a long way in attracting positive attention versus negative derision. In all three of these Abrahamic faiths, if all three of these faiths would just reevaluate their traditional beliefs and practices to make them more relevant and accessible to a modern audience, while still maintaining the core tenets of their faith. They don't need to abandon those. They could impact society in a very positive way. Because, sure, some of those core tenets of the faith, they're part of their natural law. They're cornerstone to their beliefs. And some things just aren't negotiable. But let's be honest. There are antiquated rituals and traditions and concepts that are repelling people away versus attracting people in. Just like anything in philosophy or scientific theory, theology needs to show some flexibility to adapt and to change. It is not 1300 AD anymore. So these three faiths need to change with the times to stay relevant, or else they run the risk of continued slow decline and death. Since what they have been doing the last 50 or so years, it isn't working. Wouldn't it make sense, theologically, to reevaluate and change where appropriate, while still, of course, staying true to that core important aspects of the faith? I suppose one could say, no way, no change. I guess that's fine. I mean, all three religions can do that. I mean, but there's consequences to that rigidity, though. That rigidity in thought and that type of theology. Just as that one person who never under any circumstance will ever change or admit failure, an entire faith or a scientist or a philosopher, they can all do the same. I'm right. I'm never changing. Well, what we've seen in history is that outcome usually isn't good. So there we have it. I just hope number one, you walk away with a deeper appreciation of Islam and Muhammad, or at least now understand better this faith, especially those of us in the Judeo-Christian dominated West. But also, if you're a person of faith, you don't think of your faith in some death grip competition with any of the other Abrahamic traditions. Instead, you seek understanding. You seek dialogue. You seek common ground versus seeking an enemy. Because if you want to have an enemy, you can always find one. But if you look for commonality, maybe, just maybe, some of the postmodern nihilism that God is dead can be beat back a bit. Or at least those who don't believe can have empathy and consider the religious positions. Look, I'm not naive. I know extremist elements exist everywhere. But you know what? If we always think in the extreme on everything versus seeking common sense, common ground, middle, well, pass me some Xanax and medicate me for the rest of my life. Because to be better, more holistic, more inclusive in this world, the Abrahamic tradition that has been attacked from about every angle in modern society, it can be a solution. It can, if only we follow the teachings. And if not a solution, even if religion's not a perfect solution, at least the positive teachings of love and respect and caring and striving to be your best self, to be more humble. If these type of teachings are present in all of the Abrahamic religions, take the forefront versus all the other stuff, there's great wisdom to be found there. Common wisdom that can be pushed out by all three. So as we leave this discussion today, here's one final word from the Prophet Muhammad about unity. When he said, quote, "The believers in their mutual kindness, compassion, and sympathy are just like one body. When one of the limbs suffers, the whole body responds to it with wakefulness and fever, period." There's a whole lot of wakefulness, a whole lot of fever out in the world today. And I love this. I love this quote. It highlights the importance of unity and solidarity and emphasizes that we should support and care for each other just as the different parts of a body work together for the benefit of the whole. I think this quote serves as a reminder that we should strive for unity and work together to achieve common goals rather than focusing on our differences and our divisions all the time. There's so much of that out there. The postmodern world specializes in division. It specializes in anger. It specializes in condescending superiority. We do not need the three Abrahamic religions focusing here, because these three faiths make up billions of people. And if these three faiths can just even a little bit move forward, it'd make a huge difference in this world. Well, that's it, everyone. That's the end of the medieval time period. Next, we move on to modernism. And again, for those that might be atheistic or non-religious, hey, we are moving on to some heavy-hitting philosophers and theories. Philosophers like Hobbes and Locke and Hume and Kant, and Nietzsche and Kierkegaard, and huge movements like the social contract theory, utilitarianism, early feminism. Marxism and liberalism. Not the woke type that we see in our postmodern world just yet, although we'll get there eventually, but real traditional liberalism, in which so much of our Western world was founded, and the world evolves and changes dramatically as we move throughout history and we get closer and closer to our present time. So for now, thank you again, one and all, for listening in. Subscribe to that Substack page in the show notes, please. And if you have already subscribed, tell anyone you know to join. Tell them they need to be more wise. Well, don't tell them that exactly, but you get the idea. Hope you have a great week, and we will talk